Imagine standing at the edge of a vast desert where shifting sands reveal glimpses of carved stone before covering them again. The wind carries whispers of ancient voices, and for a moment, you feel the weight of countless generations who walked this same ground. Or picture yourself diving into azure depths where ancient walls emerge from the seafloor, their massive blocks fitted together with precision that defies explanation. These moments remind us that our world holds secrets, whispers from civilizations that once thrived but now exist only as fragments and questions. Beneath the familiar surface of our planet lie traces of human achievement that challenge everything we thought we knew about our past. Some of these mysteries may be nothing more than misunderstood ruins, their significance inflated by our desire to find wonder in the mundane. Others might point to forgotten knowledge, deliberately buried by those who feared its power or simply lost as empires crumbled and memories faded into legend. In dusty archives where ancient manuscripts crumble at a touch, in underwater excavations where divers brush sediment from carved stones, in remote caves where explorers shine lights on walls covered in symbols we cannot read, archaeologists and explorers continue to uncover artifacts that refuse to fit neatly into the timeline of human progress. These discoveries don't always reveal grand lost civilizations or advanced ancient technologies. Sometimes they simply show us that the story of humanity is far more complex and fascinating than any single narrative can contain. Consider the clay tablets that suggest writing emerged thousands of years earlier than we believed, or the glass cups that change color through techniques we struggle to replicate today. Think of the massive stone structures that align perfectly with celestial events, built by people we assumed lacked such sophisticated knowledge. Each artifact forces us to reconsider what we think we know about our ancestors and their capabilities. Tonight, we embark on a journey through these puzzles written in stone, whispered in ruins, and encoded in artifacts we cannot yet fully explain. We'll explore the labyrinth that may lie beneath the Egyptian desert, examine strange objects that hint at forgotten sciences, and decipher symbols carved into rock when our ancestors first learned to leave their mark on the world. We'll dive beneath Caribbean waters to investigate underwater formations that might be natural geology or might be something far more intriguing. Each mystery we encounter invites us to question not just what happened in the distant past, but how we understand that past today. The lens through which we view history is shaped by our own assumptions and limitations. What seems impossible to us might have been commonplace to ancient minds that approached problems differently than we do. The ancient world speaks to us still, not through certainty, but through wonder, reminding us that history is far from fully written and that the greatest discoveries may still await beneath the dust of time. In the silence between known facts, imagination takes flight, and we begin to glimpse the vast tapestry of human experience that stretches back far beyond recorded memory. Deep in the heart of Egypt, where the desert meets the fertile Nile Delta, lies a mystery that has captivated explorers for over 2,000 years. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus, writing in the 5th century before Christ, described a structure so magnificent and complex that it surpassed even the Great Pyramid in wonder. He called it the Labyrinth of Egypt, a vast underground complex with 3,000 rooms, half above ground and half below, connected by passages so intricate that a visitor could wander for days without finding their way out. According to Herodotus, this labyrinth was built near Lake Moeris, in what we now call the Fayum region of Egypt. He wrote that the structure contained the tombs of the 12 kings who ruled Egypt before the pharaohs, and that within its walls lay the accumulated wisdom and treasures of ages past. The historian claimed to have walked through the upper levels himself, marveling at the carved reliefs that covered every surface and the sheer scale of the construction that seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions. The underground chambers, he was told, were even more spectacular than what he had seen above. These lower levels contained the sacred tombs of the crocodile gods, along with chambers filled with scrolls and artifacts that chronicled the entire history of Egyptian civilization. The Egyptian priests who guided him through the upper labyrinth refused to allow entry to these deeper mysteries, claiming that the sacred nature of the tombs made them forbidden to foreign visitors. They spoke in hushed tones of chambers where the walls themselves seemed to glow with an inner light and where the very air hummed with ancient power. Herodotus described corridors that branched and twisted like the pathways of a dream, leading to rooms filled with statues that seemed to watch visitors with eyes of polished stone. He wrote of halls so vast that torchlight could not reach their far walls, and of chambers where the ceiling disappeared into darkness above. The floors were made of stones so perfectly fitted that not even a blade of grass could grow between them, and the walls bore hieroglyphs that told stories of gods and kings whose names had been forgotten by the living world. For centuries, scholars debated whether Herodotus had seen something real or had fallen victim to the elaborate tales that guides sometimes told to impress foreign visitors. The description seemed too fantastic to be true, yet Herodotus was generally considered a reliable observer of the ancient world. His accounts of other sites and customs had proven accurate when checked against archaeological evidence. Other classical writers, including Strabo and Pliny the Elder, also mentioned the labyrinth, though their accounts were briefer and sometimes contradictory. Strabo, writing several centuries after Herodotus, described the labyrinth as having been largely destroyed by his time, with only foundations and scattered stones remaining. This suggested that the structure had been real but had fallen victim to the passage of time and human activity. He noted that local people still spoke of the labyrinth in fearful whispers, claiming that strange sounds could sometimes be heard coming from beneath the ground on quiet nights. Pliny the Elder provided additional details, claiming that the labyrinth had been built as a tomb for King Psammetichus, though this contradicted other accounts that attributed it to earlier rulers. He described the structure as having been built in the shape of a spiral, with passages that curved inward toward a central chamber where the most sacred mysteries were kept. According to Pliny, the labyrinth had been designed so that only those who knew the secret of its construction could navigate its passages without becoming hopelessly lost. The mystery deepened in the 19th century when archaeologists began systematically exploring Egypt. They found the ruins of what appeared to be a massive mortuary temple complex at Hawara, built by the Middle Kingdom pharaoh Amenemhet III around 1800 before Christ. The site matched the general location described by Herodotus, lying near the ancient Lake Moeris in the Fayum region. But the remains seemed far too modest to be the legendary labyrinth. Most of the original structure had been quarried away over the centuries, its finely cut stones used to build later monuments and settlements. What remained were foundation walls and scattered blocks that suggested a large complex, but nothing approaching the scale described by ancient writers. The visible ruins covered only a few acres, far less than the vast complex described in classical sources. Yet even these humble remains showed evidence of sophisticated engineering, with drainage systems and foundation techniques that spoke of builders who understood their craft. Early archaeologists who worked at the site reported strange experiences. Some claimed to hear echoes of footsteps in empty passages, while others spoke of finding chambers that seemed to extend far deeper into the earth than their measurements suggested. Local workers refused to spend the night near the ruins, telling stories of lights that moved beneath the ground and voices that called out in languages no living person could understand. Then, in recent decades, modern technology began to reveal what lay beneath the sands. Ground-penetrating radar and other survey techniques detected vast underground chambers and corridors extending far beyond the visible ruins. The Matterhorn project, a joint effort between Egyptian and Belgian researchers, has mapped what appears to be an enormous subterranean complex stretching over several acres beneath the Hawara site. The radar signatures suggest rooms, passages, and structures that could indeed match the scale described by ancient writers. Some of the underground chambers appear to be enormous, with ceilings high enough to accommodate the grand halls described by Herodotus. The layout revealed by the surveys shows a complex network of interconnected spaces that would truly deserve the name labyrinth. Most intriguingly, the radar has detected what appear to be regular geometric patterns in the underground structures, suggesting deliberate design rather than natural cave formation. The technology has also revealed what may be artificial lakes or water channels within the underground complex, possibly part of an elaborate drainage system or perhaps serving some ritual purpose. The presence of water would explain why the ancient writers described the labyrinth as being near Lake Moeris, as the underground waterways might have been connected to the larger body of water. Yet access to these underground chambers remains frustratingly limited. The Egyptian government has restricted excavation in the area, citing concerns about groundwater infiltration and the stability of the archaeological site. The water table in the Fayum region has risen significantly since ancient times, and any excavation would need to deal with flooding and the risk of structural collapse. The delicate political situation surrounding archaeological work in Egypt adds another layer of complexity to an already challenging project. Some researchers suspect that more is known about the labyrinth than officials are willing to reveal, while others argue that the restrictions are simply practical measures to protect an important but fragile archaeological resource. There are whispers among archaeologists of government surveys that have revealed chambers filled with artifacts, but if such discoveries have been made, they remain classified. The Egyptian authorities have stated that they plan to eventually allow limited excavation, but no timeline has been announced. The debate continues among archaeologists and historians. Was Herodotus describing a real structure that lies buried beneath Hawara, waiting to be fully excavated? Or was the labyrinth a misunderstanding, perhaps a conflation of several different sites or an exaggeration of the mortuary temple's already impressive scale? The radar evidence suggests that something significant lies beneath the ground, but until proper excavation can be conducted, the true nature of the Hawara labyrinth remains one of archaeology's most tantalizing mysteries. If the ancient accounts are accurate, the labyrinth would represent one of the most ambitious construction projects of the ancient world, rivaling the pyramids in complexity and surpassing them in sheer size. The implications for our understanding of ancient Egyptian civilization would be profound, suggesting levels of organization and resources that we have only begun to appreciate. It would also raise questions about the purpose of such massive underground complexes and what they might tell us about ancient Egyptian beliefs about death and the afterlife. The labyrinth also raises questions about the relationship between myth and reality in ancient accounts. How much of what Herodotus described was literal truth, and how much was symbolic or metaphorical? Perhaps the labyrinth was both real and mythical, a physical structure that also served as a powerful symbol of the complexity and mystery of existence itself. As we ponder what secrets might lie beneath the sands of Hawara, we are reminded that even in Egypt, where archaeology has been practiced for over 2 centuries, major discoveries may still await. The labyrinth, whether real or imagined, symbolizes the eternal human desire to create something lasting, something that will speak to future generations about the achievements and dreams of the past. In the quiet darkness of the desert night, when the wind whispers across the ancient stones, it is easy to imagine that somewhere beneath our feet, the corridors of the labyrinth still wait for explorers brave enough to seek them out. In the crystal-clear waters off the coast of Bimini in the Bahamas, something extraordinary lies beneath the waves. Half a mile from the shore, at a depth of just 18 feet, stretches what appears to be an ancient road made of massive limestone blocks. The stones are arranged in remarkably straight lines, fitted together with such precision that they seem almost too perfect to be the work of nature alone. Local pilots had noticed the formation for years, their small aircraft casting shadows over the mysterious underwater pathway as they flew between the islands. But it wasn't until 1968 that the underwater structure captured the attention of the wider world. That summer, archaeologist Manson Valentine and pilot Robert Brush were flying over the shallow waters when they spotted the distinctive pattern below. From the air, the arrangement looked unmistakably artificial, like the remains of some ancient harbor or ceremonial pathway that had been claimed by the rising seas thousands of years ago. The blocks stretched for nearly half a mile in a perfectly straight line, with some individual stones measuring over 15 feet in length and weighing several tons each. The formation seemed to glow with an ethereal light in the clear tropical waters, its pale limestone contrasting sharply with the darker seafloor around it. Word of the discovery spread quickly through archaeological circles and beyond, and soon divers and researchers were descending into the warm Bahamian waters to examine the formation more closely. What they found was both fascinating and deeply puzzling. The blocks were indeed massive, far larger than anything that could have been moved easily by ancient peoples using primitive tools and techniques. Yet their arrangement seemed too orderly to be entirely natural, with joints between stones that appeared to have been carefully fitted and edges that were remarkably straight and uniform. The individual stones showed a level of precision that seemed to defy explanation. Some blocks were perfectly rectangular, while others formed complex interlocking patterns that suggested sophisticated planning and engineering. Divers reported finding what appeared to be smaller stones wedged between the larger blocks, as if ancient builders had used them to create a more stable foundation. The entire formation gave the impression of a carefully constructed roadway or perhaps the foundation of some massive structure that had long since disappeared. The discovery came at a time when interest in lost civilizations was reaching new heights around the world. Just decades earlier, the famous psychic Edgar Cayce had made a series of predictions about Atlantis, claiming that remnants of the lost continent would be discovered near Bimini in the late 1960s. When the underwater formation was found almost exactly when and where Cayce had predicted, believers in his prophecies saw it as dramatic confirmation that the legendary civilization had finally been found. Cayce had described Atlantis as an advanced civilization that had existed thousands of years ago in the Atlantic Ocean, possessing technologies that surpassed even modern capabilities. According to his psychic readings, the Atlanteans had crystal power sources that could provide unlimited energy, flying vehicles that moved without visible means of propulsion, and sophisticated healing techniques that could cure any disease. The civilization had eventually destroyed itself through its own technological hubris, with wars fought using weapons of unimaginable power that ultimately sank the entire continent beneath the waves in a great cataclysm. Cayce claimed that survivors of Atlantis had fled to various parts of the world as their homeland sank, carrying fragments of their advanced knowledge to Egypt, the Americas, and other ancient centers of learning. This explained, according to his followers, how ancient civilizations had been able to build monuments like the pyramids and develop sophisticated astronomical knowledge without apparent technological advancement. The refugees from Atlantis had seeded human civilization with their wisdom, though most of their advanced technology had been lost in the destruction. The Bimini Road seemed to fit perfectly into this compelling narrative. Here was physical evidence of sophisticated construction techniques in a location that matched Cayce's predictions with remarkable accuracy. Early investigators measured the stones and found that they were arranged in geometric patterns that suggested deliberate planning and advanced mathematical understanding. Some researchers claimed to have found additional structures nearby, including what appeared to be building foundations, circular formations that might have been ancient temples, and even reports of a large underwater pyramid that sonar had detected in deeper waters nearby. The excitement surrounding these discoveries led to numerous expeditions throughout the 1970s and 80s. Treasure hunters, amateur archaeologists, and New Age believers flocked to Bimini, hoping to uncover definitive proof of Atlantean civilization. Some claimed to have found artifacts among the stones, including carved symbols, metal objects, and even what appeared to be ancient machinery. Though most of these claimed discoveries were later debunked or explained as natural formations or modern debris, the allure of the lost continent continued to draw seekers to the shallow waters off Bimini. However, as more scientists examined the formation with rigorous scientific methods, alternative explanations began to emerge. Geologists studying the area noted that the Bahama Banks were formed from limestone deposits laid down over millions of years of geological time. These limestone formations naturally fracture along regular lines due to geological stresses, creating patterns that can appear remarkably artificial to the untrained eye. The process of wave action and tidal forces can further shape these fractured limestone blocks over thousands of years, creating arrangements that seem too orderly to be entirely natural. Dr. Eugene Shin, a marine geologist with the United States Geological Survey, conducted extensive studies of the Bimini Formation throughout the 1970s and 80s. His research team used sophisticated scientific equipment to analyze the blocks and revealed that they were indeed natural limestone formations known as beach rock. This type of limestone forms when calcium carbonate precipitates from seawater in shallow coastal environments, creating layers of rock that can later fracture into regular geometric patterns as geological forces act upon them over time. Shin's team took core samples from the blocks and found that they contained shells and other marine organisms that had been alive when the rock originally formed. This indicated that the stones had formed in place on the seafloor rather than being quarried elsewhere and transported to the site by ancient builders. The geological evidence suggested that the Bimini Formation was between 2,000 and 4,000 years old, formed when sea levels were lower and the area was closer to shore or perhaps even above water. The scientific analysis also revealed that the limestone showed all the characteristics of natural beach rock formation, including the presence of marine organisms, mineral deposits typical of shallow water environments, and chemical compositions that matched known geological processes. The regular fracturing patterns that made the formation appear artificial were consistent with natural stress patterns in limestone subjected to wave action and thermal expansion over thousands of years. Yet supporters of the artificial origin theory pointed out several features that seemed difficult to explain through purely natural processes. Some of the blocks appeared to have been shaped or modified by intelligent design, with edges that were unusually straight and surfaces that seemed to have been deliberately smoothed or carved. There were also what appeared to be tool marks on some stones, suggesting that ancient peoples had at least worked with the formation even if they hadn't created it entirely from scratch. Some researchers noted that certain blocks had been moved from their original positions, creating gaps and arrangements that seemed too precise to be the result of natural wave action. The debate intensified when researchers began to examine other underwater structures throughout the Caribbean and in oceans around the world. Off the coast of Cuba, sonar surveys revealed what appeared to be massive stone structures at depths of over 2,000 feet, far deeper than any known ancient civilization could have built. Near Japan, the Yonaguni monument showed clear evidence of artificial modification, with steps, terraces, and geometric shapes that seemed to defy natural explanation. These discoveries suggested that the end of the last ice age, when sea levels rose dramatically across the globe, might have submerged numerous coastal settlements and monuments. The rising sea levels that followed the melting of the massive glaciers would have inundated vast areas of the continental shelves, potentially drowning entire civilizations that had flourished during the Ice Age when much more land was available for human settlement. Archaeological evidence from around the world shows that ancient peoples consistently chose to build their settlements near coastlines, taking advantage of marine resources, river mouths, and natural harbors for trade routes. If sophisticated civilizations had existed during the Ice Age, their remains would now lie beneath hundreds of feet of water on what were once coastal plains. This possibility adds another fascinating dimension to the Bimini Road debate. Even if the formation is primarily natural limestone that formed through geological processes, it might still have been discovered, used, or modified by ancient peoples when sea levels were much lower than they are today. The straight lines and careful arrangement of some blocks could represent human intervention with a natural formation, creating a harbor wall, ceremonial pathway, or defensive structure that took advantage of the existing stone foundation. Modern underwater archaeology has revealed that human beings throughout history were far more capable of sophisticated coastal engineering than previously believed. Ancient peoples built elaborate harbors using massive stone blocks, created underwater foundations for bridges and buildings, and even constructed artificial islands using techniques that we are only beginning to understand and appreciate. The discovery of sites like the submerged city of Pavlopetri in Greece and the underwater monuments off the coast of India demonstrates that complex civilizations did indeed create structures that were later claimed by rising seas. The Bimini Road continues to attract researchers, treasure hunters, and spiritual seekers who see in its enigmatic stones a tangible connection to humanity's lost past. Whether natural or artificial, or perhaps some combination of both, the formation reminds us that the ocean floor holds countless secrets from earlier chapters of human history. The ongoing debate over its origin reflects larger questions about how we interpret archaeological evidence and what we are willing to accept as possible for ancient civilizations. As we float above the mysterious stones in the warm Caribbean waters, watching colorful fish swim through what might once have been ancient corridors, we are reminded that the boundary between natural and artificial, between geology and archaeology, is often far more blurred than we might expect. The sea keeps its secrets well, And perhaps the truth about Bimini lies not in choosing definitively between natural formation and human construction, but in understanding how ancient peoples might have seen meaning and utility in the patterns that nature had already begun to create beneath the waves. In the dusty corridors of the National Museum of Iraq in Baghdad, among thousands of ancient artifacts recovered from archaeological sites across Mesopotamia, sits a small clay jar that has puzzled researchers for decades. At first glance, it appears unremarkable, just another piece of pottery from the ancient world. But hidden within this humble vessel lies a mystery that challenges our understanding of ancient technology and raises profound questions about what our ancestors might have known about the forces that power our modern world. The object was discovered in 1936 by German archaeologist Wilhelm König during excavations at Kujut Rabu, a site near Baghdad that dates back over 2,000 years to the Parthian period. König was methodically cataloguing artifacts when he noticed something unusual about this particular jar. Unlike typical pottery vessels, it contained a mysterious assemblage of materials that seemed to serve no obvious practical purpose for storing grain, water, or other commodities. The clay vessel stands about 6 inches tall and appears to have been sealed with an asphalt stopper. Inside, König found a copper cylinder that had been carefully inserted into the jar, with an iron rod suspended within the copper tube. The iron rod showed clear signs of corrosion, suggesting it had been in contact with some kind of acidic substance over time. The entire assembly was held in place with more asphalt, creating what appeared to be a deliberately constructed device rather than a random collection of materials. When König first examined the object, he was struck by its resemblance to modern galvanic cells or batteries. The combination of two different metals in what could have been an electrolytic solution seemed too purposeful to be coincidental. He theorized that if the jar had once been filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or wine, it could have generated a small electrical current through the chemical reaction between the copper and iron components. The discovery was initially met with skepticism from the archaeological community. The idea that ancient peoples could have understood electricity seemed preposterous given the conventional timeline of technological development. Electricity was supposed to be a modern discovery, first properly investigated by scientists like Benjamin Franklin and Alessandro Volta in the 18th and 19th centuries. The notion that Mesopotamian craftsmen working 2 millennia earlier could have created primitive batteries challenged fundamental assumptions about the linear progression of human knowledge. However, as more researchers examined the Baghdad battery as it came to be known, the mystery only deepened. The construction showed clear evidence of intentional design, with the copper cylinder carefully shaped to fit inside the clay jar and the iron rod positioned to avoid contact with the copper except through whatever liquid medium might have filled the vessel. The craftsmanship suggested that whoever created this device understood its purpose and had taken care to construct it properly. König's initial hypothesis gained support when other researchers began conducting experiments with replicas of the ancient device. In 1948, Willard Gray, an engineer at General Electric, built a reproduction of the Baghdad battery using the same materials and proportions as the original. When he filled it with grape juice, the device produced a measurable electrical current of approximately 2 volts, enough to power a small light bulb or create a noticeable shock. Subsequent experiments by other researchers confirmed that the device could indeed function as a primitive battery. Different electrolytic solutions produced varying amounts of current, with acidic liquids like vinegar or citric acid proving most effective. Some researchers achieved currents of up to 4 volts using optimized electrolyte solutions, demonstrating that the ancient design was surprisingly efficient for such a simple construction. The question then became what ancient peoples might have used such a device for. Without sophisticated electrical equipment or understanding of electromagnetic theory, what practical applications could a primitive battery have served? Several theories emerged, each offering intriguing possibilities for how this technology might have been employed in the ancient world. One of the most compelling theories suggests that the Baghdad battery might have been used for electroplating, a process where a thin layer of one metal is deposited onto another through electrical current. Ancient jewelers and craftsmen were masters of metallurgy, creating intricate ornaments and decorative objects that often combined different metals in complex patterns. Some artifacts from the period show evidence of metal plating that would have been difficult to achieve through conventional ancient techniques. Archaeological evidence from various Mesopotamian sites includes jewelry and decorative objects that appear to have been electroplated with gold or silver. The uniform coating and precise application of these metal layers suggests a level of control that would be consistent with electrochemical processes rather than simple fire gilding or mechanical application. If ancient craftsmen had access to primitive batteries, they could have developed electroplating techniques that would have given them significant advantages in creating luxury goods. Another theory proposes that the devices might have been used for medical purposes. Ancient medical texts from various cultures describe treatments that involved applying mild electrical stimulation to patients suffering from various ailments. The sensation of electrical current was known to have therapeutic effects for certain conditions, and practitioners might have discovered that these mysterious devices could provide controlled doses of electrical energy for healing purposes. Some researchers have suggested that the batteries might have had religious or ceremonial significance. Ancient peoples often attributed supernatural properties to phenomena they couldn't fully understand, and the ability to generate invisible forces that could cause sparks or shocks might have been seen as evidence of divine power. Priests or shamans might have used these devices to create seemingly miraculous effects during religious ceremonies, enhancing their authority and reinforcing belief in their connection to supernatural forces. However, skeptics of the battery theory point out several problems with these explanations. No other examples of similar devices have been found at archaeological sites throughout Mesopotamia or elsewhere in the ancient world. If the technology had been widely known and used, we would expect to find more evidence of its application. The lack of related artifacts suggests that either the technology was extremely limited in scope or that the Baghdad battery might not have been a battery at all. Alternative explanations for the object have been proposed by researchers who question the electrical theory. Some suggest that the device might have been used for storing scrolls or documents, with the metal components serving as protective containers for precious texts. The asphalt ceiling would have protected organic materials from moisture and decay, making this a plausible explanation for the careful construction and unusual materials. Others have proposed that the object might have been a ceremonial vessel used in religious rituals that had nothing to do with electricity. The combination of different metals and the careful sealing could have had symbolic significance in ancient belief systems, representing the union of different elements or the containment of spiritual forces. Without clear textual evidence describing the object's purpose, these alternative explanations remain viable possibilities. The debate over the Baghdad battery reflects broader questions about ancient knowledge and the assumptions we make about technological development. Modern archaeology has repeatedly revealed that ancient civilizations possessed sophisticated understanding of mathematics, astronomy, engineering, and chemistry that rivals our own capabilities in many areas. The idea that they might have also experimented with electrical phenomena is perhaps not as far-fetched as it initially seemed. Recent research into ancient technologies has uncovered numerous examples of advanced techniques that were thought to be modern innovations. Ancient metalworkers developed alloys and treatments that modern science is only beginning to understand. Ancient astronomers tracked celestial movements with precision that required sophisticated mathematical models. Ancient engineers built structures that continue to challenge our understanding of construction techniques. In this context, the possibility that ancient peoples might have discovered basic electrical principles becomes more plausible. They had access to the same natural materials and physical laws that govern electrical phenomena today. Copper and iron were readily available, and acidic solutions were common in daily life. A curious craftsman experimenting with different combinations of materials might well have stumbled upon the electrical properties of galvanic cells. Whether the Baghdad battery was truly an ancient electrical device or served some other purpose, its existence reminds us that the ancient world holds many secrets that we have yet to fully understand. Each artifact recovered from archaeological sites offers clues about the knowledge, skills, and aspirations of our ancestors. Sometimes these clues challenge our preconceptions about what was possible in the distant past, forcing us to reconsider our assumptions about the linear progression of human achievement. As we contemplate this mysterious object in its museum case, we are reminded that innovation and discovery have been constant companions of human civilization throughout history. The spark of curiosity that drives us to experiment and explore is the same force that might have led an ancient craftsman to combine copper, iron, and clay in ways that would puzzle researchers thousands of years later. In the end, the Baghdad battery stands as a testament to the enduring human desire to understand and harness the hidden forces of the natural world. In a quiet Romanian village near the Meuse River, where rolling hills meet ancient forests that have witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, 3 small clay tablets emerged from the earth in 1961 to challenge everything we thought we knew about the origins of human writing. The discovery happened almost by accident when workers were digging a foundation for a new building in the village of Tartaria. Their shovels struck something hard beneath the surface, and what they uncovered would spark decades of scholarly debate about when and where humanity first learned to record its thoughts in permanent form. The tablets themselves are modest objects, small enough to hold comfortably in the palm of your hand. Made from fired clay, they bear mysterious symbols that seem to dance across their surfaces in patterns that suggest meaning but resist easy interpretation. The largest tablet is roughly circular, while the other 2 are rectangular, and all 3 are covered with carefully incised marks that appear to represent some form of early writing system. Nicolae Vlasa, the Romanian archaeologist who first studied the tablets, was immediately struck by their potential significance. The symbols bore an uncanny resemblance to the earliest known writing from Mesopotamia, the cuneiform script that emerged in Sumer around 3200 years before Christ. But the Tartaria tablets had been found in a layer of earth that appeared to be much older, possibly dating back to 5,500 years before Christ or even earlier. If this dating proved accurate, it would mean that writing had emerged in Europe thousands of years before it appeared in the Middle East. The implications of such a discovery were staggering. The conventional understanding of human civilization held that writing was invented in Mesopotamia as cities grew larger and more complex, requiring new methods to keep track of trade, laws, and administrative records. From there, the knowledge of writing was thought to have spread gradually to other parts of the world through trade and cultural contact. The idea that European peoples might have developed writing independently and perhaps even earlier than their Mesopotamian counterparts challenged fundamental assumptions about the flow of human knowledge. The symbols on the Tartaria tablets include a variety of marks that range from simple geometric shapes to more complex pictographic representations. Some symbols appear to represent animals, with clear depictions of what might be goats, birds, or other creatures important to agricultural societies. Others seem more abstract, consisting of lines, circles, and curved marks arranged in patterns that suggest they might represent numbers, concepts, or linguistic elements. One of the most intriguing aspects of the tablets is their apparent organization. The symbols are not randomly scattered across the clay surfaces, but appear to be arranged in deliberate groupings that suggest some form of syntax or grammatical structure. This organization implies that the creators of the tablets were not simply making decorative marks, but were attempting to record information in a systematic way that could be understood by others who knew the code. The discovery of the tablets coincided with growing archaeological evidence for a sophisticated European culture known as the Vinca civilization, which flourished in the Balkans between 5,500 and 4,500 years before Christ. Vinca settlements were remarkably advanced for their time, with evidence of metallurgy, complex pottery, and urban planning that rivaled anything found in contemporary Middle Eastern sites. The people of this culture created elaborate figurines, built substantial houses, and developed trade networks that extended across much of southeastern Europe. As archaeologists began to examine other Vinca sites more carefully, they discovered that symbols similar to those on the Tartaria tablets appeared at locations throughout the region. These symbols were found carved into pottery, inscribed on figurines, and painted on the walls of buildings. The widespread distribution of similar symbols suggested that this was not an isolated experiment in symbol making, but part of a broader cultural phenomenon that might represent the earliest known writing system in human history. Dr. Maria Gimbutas, a prominent archaeologist who studied European prehistory, proposed that the Vinca symbols represented a genuine writing system used by what she called Old Europe. According to her theory, these early European societies had developed complex religious and social systems that required written records to maintain. The symbols might have been used to record religious ceremonies, mark ownership of property, or preserve important cultural knowledge for future generations. Gimbutas argued that the Vinca culture represented a sophisticated matriarchal society that valued artistic expression, religious symbolism, and peaceful cooperation. The writing system, she suggested, might have been used primarily for religious and ceremonial purposes, rather than the administrative and commercial functions that drove the development of writing in Mesopotamia. This would explain why the European symbols seem more artistic and symbolic than their Middle Eastern counterparts. However, many scholars remained skeptical of the claim that the Vinca symbols represented true writing. Critics pointed out that while the symbols were clearly meaningful to their creators, they might not constitute a complete writing system capable of recording spoken language. Instead, they might be better understood as a sophisticated form of symbolic communication that fell short of true literacy. The distinction between proto-writing and true writing is crucial to understanding the significance of the Tartaria tablets. Proto-writing systems use symbols to convey meaning but cannot fully represent the complexity of spoken language. They might record numbers, names, or simple concepts, but lack the grammatical structures necessary to capture the nuances of human speech. True writing systems, by contrast, can theoretically record any utterance in the spoken language with sufficient precision that a reader can reconstruct the original meaning. Determining which category the Vinca symbols belong to requires careful analysis of their structure and usage. Scholars have attempted to identify patterns in the symbol sequences that might reveal grammatical rules or linguistic structures. Some researchers claim to have found evidence of word order, verb conjugations, and other features that would indicate a true writing system. Others argue that the symbols are too limited and repetitive to represent the full complexity of human language. The dating of the Tartaria tablets themselves remains a subject of ongoing debate. While the original excavations suggested a very early date that would predate Mesopotamian writing, subsequent analysis has raised questions about the archaeological context of the discovery. Some researchers argue that the tablets might be younger than originally thought, possibly dating to a period when knowledge of Mesopotamian writing could have influenced their creation. Radiocarbon dating of organic materials found with the tablets has produced conflicting results, with some tests supporting the early date and others suggesting a later period. The challenge lies in determining whether the organic materials were contemporaneous with the tablets or whether they represent contamination from different archaeological layers. Without clear stratigraphic evidence, it remains difficult to establish the precise age of the tablets. Even if the tablets prove to be younger than originally claimed, they would still represent an important milestone in the development of European literacy. The symbols demonstrate that complex forms of written communication were developing in multiple regions of the world during the late Neolithic period, suggesting that the human capacity for symbolic thinking and record-keeping was more widespread than previously believed. The study of the Tartaria tablets has also contributed to our understanding of how writing systems develop and spread. Rather than viewing literacy as a single invention that diffused from one center, researchers now recognize that symbol systems emerged independently in multiple locations as human societies became more complex. The transition from simple pictographs to sophisticated writing was apparently a gradual process that occurred whenever communities reached a certain level of social and economic complexity. Modern analysis techniques have provided new insights into the creation and use of the Tartaria tablets. Microscopic examination of the incised marks reveals details about the tools used to create them and the sequence in which different symbols were added. Chemical analysis of the clay has helped identify the source of the raw materials and the firing techniques used to harden the tablets. These technical studies provide clues about the cultural context in which the tablets were created. Computer analysis of the symbol patterns has also contributed to our understanding of their possible meaning. Researchers have used statistical methods to identify recurring sequences and structural patterns that might reveal the underlying logic of the symbol system. While these studies have not definitively cracked the code of the Vinca symbols, they have provided valuable insights into their complexity and organization. The mystery of the Tartaria tablets reminds us that the development of human communication was far more complex and varied than simple linear models suggest. Writing did not emerge once in a single location and then spread unchanged to the rest of the world. Instead, different cultures experimented with various forms of symbolic communication, developing unique solutions to the challenge of preserving and transmitting information across time and space. As we hold these ancient tablets in our imagination, feeling the weight of their clay and tracing the mysterious symbols with our eyes, we are reminded that the human desire to communicate transcends time and culture. Whether these marks represent true writing or sophisticated symbolic communication, they demonstrate our ancestors' determination to leave permanent records of their thoughts, beliefs, and experiences. In the quiet village where they were discovered, the tablets continue to whisper their secrets, waiting for the day when we might finally understand the messages they were meant to convey. In the hushed galleries of the British Museum in London, where countless treasures from across the ancient world rest in climate-controlled silence, stands a glass cup that defies every assumption we might make about ancient craftsmanship. At first glance, the Lycurgus cup appears to be an elegant example of Roman glassmaking from the 4th century after Christ, decorated with an intricate scene carved in relief that tells the story of King Lycurgus of Thrace and his unfortunate encounter with the god Dionysus. But this cup harbors a secret that remained hidden for over 1,500 years, a mystery that modern science has only recently begun to understand. The cup stands about 6.5 inches tall, crafted from a single piece of glass that has been painstakingly carved to create a complex three-dimensional scene. The relief depicts the moment when Lycurgus, who had opposed the worship of Dionysus, finds himself trapped in a tangle of grapevines as divine punishment for his defiance. Figures of the god Dionysus, the satyr Ampelos, and a nymph surround the struggling king, their forms so delicately rendered that they seem almost alive in the translucent material. But the true wonder of the Lycurgus cup reveals itself only when light passes through it. When illuminated from behind, the cup undergoes a dramatic transformation, changing from its normal jade green color to a brilliant translucent red that seems to glow with inner fire. This remarkable optical effect, known as dichroism, gives the cup an almost supernatural quality that must have amazed ancient viewers who witnessed its magical color change. For centuries, the mechanism behind this extraordinary transformation remained a complete mystery. Art historians and archaeologists could only speculate about how Roman craftsmen had achieved such a remarkable effect. Some theorized that special dyes or chemicals had been mixed into the glass during its creation, while others suggested that the color change might be the result of surface treatments applied after the cup was formed. The technology seemed impossibly advanced for its time, leading some to wonder whether the cup might be a much later creation that had been mistakenly attributed to the Roman period. The mystery deepened when researchers began to examine other ancient glass objects and discovered that the Lycurgus cup was virtually unique. While Roman glassmakers were renowned for their skill and innovation, producing everything from delicate vessels to massive architectural installations, no other examples of dichroic glass from the ancient period had been definitively identified. This suggested that the technique used to create the cup was either extremely rare or perhaps the result of a fortunate accident that ancient craftsmen could not reliably reproduce. It wasn't until 1990 that modern scientific analysis finally revealed the secret behind the cup's remarkable properties. Using electron microscopy and other advanced analytical techniques, researchers at the British Museum discovered that the glass contained minute particles of gold and silver nanoparticles, scattered throughout the material in concentrations so small that they are invisible to the naked eye. These nanoparticles, measuring only about 70 nanometers in diameter, are responsible for the cup's extraordinary optical behavior. The discovery was revolutionary, not only for understanding the Lycurgus cup, but for the broader history of nanotechnology itself. Nanoparticles are structures so small that they exhibit properties very different from bulk materials, and their manipulation requires precise control over matter at the atomic and molecular level. The idea that Roman craftsmen working 1600 years ago could have achieved such sophisticated materials engineering seemed almost impossible to believe. When light strikes the nanoparticles embedded in the glass, it interacts with the electrons in the metal atoms in a phenomenon known as surface plasmon resonance. The nanoparticles absorb and scatter different wavelengths of light depending on their size, shape, and the surrounding medium. In the case of the Lycurgus cup, the gold and silver nanoparticles absorb blue and green light while allowing red light to pass through, creating the dramatic color change that occurs when the cup is backlit. The precision required to achieve this effect is remarkable. The nanoparticles must be exactly the right size and distributed evenly throughout the glass to produce the desired optical properties. Too large or too small, and the effect would be lost. Too concentrated, and the glass would appear muddy or opaque. The ancient craftsmen somehow achieved a perfect balance that modern materials scientists struggle to replicate even with sophisticated equipment and precise control over experimental conditions. The question of how Roman glassmakers accomplished this feat has sparked intense debate among researchers. One possibility is that they discovered the technique through careful experimentation, perhaps starting with attempts to color glass using metal additives and gradually refining their methods through trial and error. Ancient craftsmen were known for their willingness to experiment with different materials and techniques, and they might have stumbled upon the nanoparticle effect while pursuing other goals. Another theory suggests that the Romans might have had access to natural sources of nanoparticles, perhaps in the form of certain mineral deposits or organic materials that contained gold and silver in colloidal form. By incorporating these materials into their glass recipes, they could have achieved the nanoparticle effect without fully understanding the underlying physics. Ancient alchemists and craftsmen often worked with recipes and techniques that they didn't completely understand but that produced reliable results through accumulated knowledge and experience. The creation of the Lycurgus cup would have required not only knowledge of the basic technique, but also exceptional skill in glass carving and forming. The cup was likely created using a process called cage cup construction, where a solid glass blank is carefully carved away to leave only the thin connecting elements that hold the decorative relief in place. This technique was extremely difficult and time-consuming, requiring months of careful work by a master craftsman. The addition of the dichroic effect would have made the cup even more challenging to create, as the artist would have needed to work with glass that behaved differently from normal materials. The artistic and technical achievement represented by the Lycurgus cup suggests that it was created for a very special purpose, perhaps as a gift for an emperor or other high-ranking official. The mythological scene depicted on the cup carries religious and political significance, as the story of Lycurgus served as a warning about the consequences of opposing divine authority. The cup's magical color-changing properties would have enhanced its symbolic power, creating a dramatic visual metaphor for transformation and divine intervention. Recent research has revealed that the Romans may have used similar nanotechnology in other applications, though evidence remains fragmentary. Some Roman coins and jewelry show signs of metal nanoparticles that create subtle color effects, suggesting that knowledge of these techniques might have been more widespread than the rarity of surviving examples would suggest. However, the extreme fragility of ancient glass and the value of precious metals means that most examples would have been lost to time through breakage, recycling, or destruction. Modern materials scientists have attempted to recreate the Lycurgus cup using contemporary nanotechnology techniques, but even with precise control over particle size and distribution, achieving the exact optical properties of the original remains challenging. This has led to increased appreciation for the skill and knowledge of ancient craftsmen who somehow managed to achieve results that push the boundaries of what we consider possible for their technological level. The discovery of nanoparticles in the Lycurgus cup has also opened new avenues for research into ancient technologies. Scientists are now examining other ancient artifacts with renewed interest, looking for evidence of sophisticated materials engineering that might have been overlooked in previous studies. Advanced analytical techniques that were not available to earlier generations of researchers are revealing hidden complexities in objects that were once thought to be simple examples of ancient craftsmanship. The cup also raises intriguing questions about the transmission and loss of knowledge in the ancient world. If Roman craftsmen possessed such advanced understanding of materials science, why did this knowledge apparently disappear with the fall of the empire? Perhaps the techniques were closely guarded secrets known only to a few master craftsmen, making them vulnerable to being lost during periods of social upheaval. Or perhaps the knowledge survived in some form but was not recognized by later generations who lacked the scientific framework to understand its significance. The story of the Lycurgus cup reminds us that ancient civilizations were capable of achievements that continue to amaze and inspire us today. The cup stands as a testament to human ingenuity and the endless quest to push the boundaries of what is possible. Its creators may not have understood the physics of surface plasmon resonance or the properties of nanoparticles, but they possessed something equally valuable: the curiosity and skill to experiment with new ideas and the patience to perfect techniques that seemed almost magical to their contemporaries. As we contemplate this remarkable object, glowing softly in its museum display case, we are reminded that the line between science and art, between technology and magic, has always been thinner than we might imagine. The Lycurgus cup bridges the ancient and modern worlds, connecting us to craftsmen who worked with the same materials and faced the same challenges that occupy researchers today. In its shimmering surface, we see reflected not only the story of King Lycurgus, but the eternal human desire to create something beautiful and lasting that will inspire wonder in future generations. On a windswept hillside in West Dunbartonshire, Scotland, where ancient heather meets the ever-changing sky and the distant sounds of the modern world fade into whispers, lies buried one of Europe's most enigmatic archaeological treasures. The Cochno stone, as it has come to be known, rests beneath a protective layer of earth and topsoil, hidden from view but not forgotten. When fully exposed, this massive rock surface reveals an intricate tapestry of symbols that has puzzled archaeologists, astronomers, and mystics for over a century. The stone was first brought to scholarly attention in 1896 by the Reverend James Harvey, a local minister with a passion for archaeology who was exploring the hills near Clydebank when he noticed unusual markings carved into an exposed section of bedrock. As Harvey carefully cleared away centuries of accumulated soil and vegetation, he revealed a rock art panel of extraordinary complexity and scale, covering an area roughly 42 feet long and 26 feet wide. What Harvey uncovered was a surface covered with hundreds of carved symbols known as cup and ring marks, along with spiral patterns, grooves, and other geometric designs that seemed to follow some underlying logic or meaning. The symbols were not randomly scattered across the stone, but appeared to be organized into distinct groups and patterns, suggesting that they represented some form of deliberate communication or record-keeping system created by people who lived thousands of years ago. The cup and ring marks themselves are among the most mysterious symbols found at prehistoric sites throughout Atlantic Europe. They consist of small circular depressions, or cups, surrounded by one or more concentric rings carved into the stone surface. Some are connected by straight or curved lines called gutters, while others stand alone or are grouped with similar symbols in complex arrangements. The Cochno stone contains some of the finest and most elaborate examples of these symbols ever discovered, with over 90 individual cup and ring marks distributed across its surface. The creation of such an extensive collection of symbols would have required enormous effort and dedication on the part of ancient peoples. Each cup was carefully pecked into the hard rock surface using stone tools, a process that would have taken hours of patient work for even a single small depression. The concentric rings required even more time and skill, as they needed to be perfectly circular and evenly spaced to achieve the geometric precision visible on the Cochno stone. The entire panel might have taken months or even years to complete, representing a massive investment of time and labor by a community that clearly considered the project to be of vital importance. Archaeological evidence suggests that the Cochno stone was created during the Neolithic period, roughly 5,000 years ago, making it contemporary with other famous prehistoric monuments like Stonehenge and the stone circles of Orkney. This was a time of significant cultural and technological change in Britain, when farming communities were developing new forms of social organization, religious beliefs, and artistic expression. The creation of elaborate rock art panels like the Cochno stone may have been part of these broader cultural developments. The question of what these symbols might have meant has generated numerous theories over the decades since the stone's discovery. Some researchers have suggested that the cup and ring marks represent astronomical observations, with the circular patterns corresponding to celestial bodies and their movements across the sky. The positioning and grouping of symbols might record important astronomical events like eclipses, solstices, or the appearance of comets that held special significance for ancient peoples. This astronomical interpretation gains support from the fact that many cup and ring mark sites are located in positions that would have provided clear views of the horizon and sky, making them ideal locations for astronomical observation. The Cochno stone itself sits on elevated ground with expansive views in multiple directions, providing an excellent vantage point for watching the movements of sun, moon, and stars. Some researchers have attempted to correlate specific symbol groupings with known astronomical phenomena, though these interpretations remain speculative. Another theory suggests that the symbols might represent territorial markers or maps of some kind, recording important landscape features, boundaries, or resource locations. Ancient peoples had intimate knowledge of their local environments and might have used permanent rock art to preserve information about hunting grounds, water sources, seasonal migration routes, or sacred places. The complex arrangements of symbols on the Cochno stone could represent a sophisticated mapping system that encoded detailed geographical information in symbolic form. The possibility that cup and ring marks served religious or ceremonial purposes has also been extensively explored. Many of these symbols are found at sites that seem to have held special significance for ancient communities, often in dramatic landscape settings that would have been ideal for religious gatherings or ritual activities. The circular nature of the symbols might represent cycles of life, death, and rebirth, or they could symbolize the sun, moon, or other celestial bodies that played important roles in prehistoric religious beliefs. Some researchers have noted similarities between cup and ring marks and symbols used by later Celtic cultures, suggesting possible continuity in symbolic traditions across thousands of years. The spirals and concentric circles that appear on the Cochno stone bear resemblance to designs found in Celtic art, mythology, and religious practices. This has led to speculation that some aspects of prehistoric symbolism might have survived in modified form into historical periods, preserved in oral traditions and cultural practices that we can still study today. The preservation of the Cochno stone has presented significant challenges over the years since its discovery. Exposure to weather, vandalism, and natural erosion gradually began to damage the carved symbols, threatening to destroy this irreplaceable archaeological resource. In 1964, Glasgow University made the controversial decision to bury the stone under several feet of earth and topsoil to protect it from further deterioration. While this action succeeded in preserving the carvings, it also made the stone inaccessible to researchers and the public for decades. The decision to bury the stone was not taken lightly, as it meant losing the ability to study and display one of Scotland's most important prehistoric monuments. However, the alternative of allowing continued exposure would likely have resulted in the gradual destruction of the symbols through erosion and human interference. The stone had already suffered damage from visitors who carved their own initials and messages into the ancient surface, and weather patterns were slowly wearing away the more delicate carved details. In 2015, the stone was briefly uncovered for a comprehensive digital recording project led by researchers from Glasgow School of Art. Using advanced photogrammetry and three-dimensional scanning techniques, they created detailed digital models of the entire carved surface, capturing every symbol and marking with unprecedented precision. This digital archive ensures that the information contained on the Cochno stone will be preserved even if the physical monument eventually deteriorates, and it allows researchers around the world to study the symbols without requiring access to the buried original. The temporary exposure also revealed that the protective burial had been largely successful in preserving the stone. The symbols appeared much as they had when first discovered, with only minimal additional erosion or damage. This confirmed that the controversial decision to bury the monument had been justified, even though it meant sacrificing public access to preserve the archaeological integrity of the site. Modern analysis of the Cochno stone has benefited from advances in archaeological techniques and comparative studies of similar sites throughout Europe. Researchers have identified patterns in the arrangement and distribution of symbols that provide clues about their possible meaning and function. Statistical analysis of symbol frequencies and spatial relationships has revealed organizational principles that might reflect the underlying logic of the prehistoric communication system. Comparative studies with other cup and ringmark sites have shown that while each location is unique, there are recurring patterns and symbol types that appear across wide geographical areas. This suggests that the symbols represented a shared symbolic language or tradition that was understood by prehistoric communities throughout Atlantic Europe. The standardization of certain symbol types and arrangements implies sophisticated cultural networks that allowed information and ideas to spread across vast distances during the Neolithic period. The mystery of the Cochno stone reflects broader questions about prehistoric communication and the development of symbolic thinking in early human societies. The ability to create and interpret complex symbolic systems represents a crucial milestone in human cognitive development, marking the emergence of abstract thinking and cultural transmission that would eventually lead to written language and recorded history. As we imagine standing on that Scottish hillside where the stone lies buried, surrounded by the same landscape that ancient peoples knew and marked with their mysterious symbols, we are reminded of the deep continuity of human experience across time. The people who created these carvings lived in a world without writing, yet they found ways to encode their knowledge, beliefs, and observations in permanent form. Their stone messages continue to challenge and inspire us, waiting beneath the earth for the day when we might finally understand the code they worked so patiently to preserve. The Cochno stone stands as a testament to the universal human desire to leave lasting marks on the world, to communicate across the vast distances of time, and to transform the raw materials of nature into something meaningful and enduring. In its hidden symbols, we glimpse the minds of our ancestors reaching across thousands of years, still speaking to us in a language we have yet to fully comprehend. In the quiet halls of Yale University's Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library, surrounded by some of humanity's most precious written treasures, rests a book that has defied every attempt to understand its contents for over 500 years. The Voynich manuscript, as scholars have come to call it, appears at first glance to be a medieval treatise on botany, astronomy, or medicine. Its pages are filled with detailed illustrations of plants that seem familiar yet strange, astronomical diagrams that hint at cosmic knowledge, and human figures engaged in mysterious activities. But accompanying these intriguing images is text written in a script that no living person can read, a language that might be an elaborate cipher, a lost tongue, or perhaps something else entirely. The manuscript takes its name from Wilfrid Voynich, a Polish book dealer and revolutionary who acquired it in 1912 from the Jesuit college at Frascati near Rome. Voynich recognized immediately that he had purchased something extraordinary. The book was clearly very old, written on vellum pages that had been carefully prepared from animal skins according to medieval methods. The illustrations showed exceptional skill and attention to detail, suggesting that considerable time and expense had been invested in its creation. But most intriguingly, the text was written in a script unlike anything Voynich had ever encountered in his extensive dealings with rare manuscripts. The manuscript consists of roughly 240 pages, though some leaves have been lost over the centuries. The text flows smoothly across the pages in neat lines that suggest a practiced hand, with occasional paragraph breaks and what appear to be section headings written in larger letters. The individual characters are drawn with confidence and consistency, indicating that whoever created the manuscript was fluent in this mysterious writing system. The overall appearance suggests a serious scholarly work rather than a casual experiment or forgery. The illustrations that accompany the text are equally puzzling and beautiful. The botanical section, which comprises the largest portion of the manuscript, shows detailed drawings of plants rendered in vibrant green inks with roots, stems, leaves, and flowers carefully depicted. Yet when botanists have attempted to identify these species, they have found that while the plants look tantalizingly familiar, none can be definitively matched to known flora. Some appear to be composite creations, combining elements from different real plants, while others seem to be entirely imaginary species that follow botanical logic but represent no actual organisms. The astronomical section contains circular diagrams filled with stars, symbols, and text that suggest sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics. Some diagrams appear to represent zodiacal signs or calendar systems, while others show complex arrangements of celestial bodies that might record actual astronomical observations or represent theoretical models of cosmic structure. The precision and complexity of these diagrams indicate that their creator possessed considerable knowledge of astronomical concepts, whether derived from direct observation or scholarly study. Perhaps most mysterious of all are the sections that appear to deal with human biology and medicine. These pages show groups of nude female figures engaged in activities that seem to involve bathing, various procedures, or rituals of some kind. The figures are connected by networks of tubes or channels through which colored liquids appear to flow, creating complex systems that might represent blood circulation, spiritual energy pathways, or alchemical processes. The purpose and meaning of these illustrations remain completely opaque to modern viewers. Since Voynich's acquisition of the manuscript, countless scholars, cryptographers, linguists, and amateur enthusiasts have attempted to crack its code. Professional code breakers who successfully deciphered enemy communications during both world wars turned their attention to the manuscript, confident that their proven methods would quickly reveal its secrets. Computer scientists have applied increasingly sophisticated analytical techniques, looking for patterns that might reveal the underlying structure of the mysterious language. Linguists have compared the text to every known ancient and medieval language, searching for similarities that might provide clues to its origins. Despite these extensive efforts, the Voynich manuscript has resisted all attempts at decipherment. The text shows statistical properties that are consistent with natural language, including appropriate distributions of character frequencies and word lengths that suggest meaningful communication rather than random gibberish. Yet the specific patterns do not match any known linguistic family, leading some researchers to propose that the manuscript might be written in an artificial language created specifically for this work. One theory suggests that the manuscript represents an early attempt at creating a philosophical or universal language, similar to projects undertaken by later scholars like John Wilkins and Gottfried Leibniz. Such artificial languages were designed to express concepts more precisely than natural languages allowed, often using logical structures that reflected underlying philosophical principles. If the Voynich manuscript employed such a system, it might explain why conventional linguistic analysis has failed to yield results. Another possibility is that the text is written in a highly sophisticated cipher that disguises a known language beneath layers of encryption. Medieval and Renaissance scholars were familiar with various cryptographic techniques, and a work dealing with sensitive topics like alchemy, magic, or heretical religious ideas might well have been deliberately obscured to protect its author from persecution. However, no cipher system known from the relevant historical period would have been sophisticated enough to produce the specific statistical properties observed in the Voynich text. Carbon dating of the vellum pages has established that the manuscript was created sometime between 1404 and 1438, during the early Renaissance, when interest in natural philosophy, alchemy, and esoteric knowledge was flourishing throughout Europe. This was a period of significant intellectual ferment, when scholars were rediscovering classical texts, experimenting with new ideas, and developing innovative approaches to understanding the natural world. The manuscript might represent one individual's attempt to synthesize various strands of contemporary knowledge into a comprehensive system. Recent research has focused on analyzing the manuscript's illustrations for clues about its origins and purpose. Art historians have identified stylistic elements that suggest the work was created in Central Europe, possibly in the regions that are now Germany, Austria, or the Czech Republic. The botanical illustrations show influences from medieval herbal traditions, while the astronomical diagrams reflect knowledge of Arabic and classical sources that were being translated into Latin during this period. Computer analysis of the text has revealed intriguing patterns that continue to puzzle researchers. The manuscript shows evidence of what linguists call Zipf's law, a mathematical relationship that governs the frequency distribution of words in natural languages. This suggests that the text represents genuine linguistic communication rather than meaningless decoration or random symbol generation. However, the specific patterns differ enough from known languages to indicate that the Voynich text follows its own unique structural rules. Some researchers have proposed that the manuscript might represent a form of glossolalia or ecstatic speech that was later transcribed into written form. Medieval mystics and religious visionaries sometimes reported receiving divine revelations in unknown languages that they faithfully recorded despite not understanding their meaning. If the Voynich manuscript represents such a phenomenon, it might explain both its linguistic properties and its apparent resistance to conventional decipherment methods. The possibility that the manuscript is an elaborate hoax has also been seriously considered by researchers. Some scholars argue that the statistical properties of the text could have been produced by a clever forger using systematic methods to generate plausible-looking but meaningless content. The consistent style and apparent fluency of the writing might reflect careful planning rather than genuine linguistic competence. However, the enormous effort required to create such a sophisticated forgery, combined with the lack of any clear motive for the deception, makes this explanation seem unlikely. Modern digital analysis has provided new tools for studying the manuscript, allowing researchers to examine minute details of the ink, parchment, and writing techniques used in its creation. Multispectral imaging has revealed text and illustrations that are invisible to the naked eye, including corrections, additions, and underlying sketches that provide clues about the manuscript's creation process. These technical studies confirm the medieval date of the work and provide evidence for the care and expertise that went into its production. The enduring mystery of the Voynich manuscript has made it a cultural phenomenon that extends far beyond academic circles. The book has inspired novels, films, and countless internet discussions among people fascinated by its enigmatic nature. Amateur cryptographers continue to propose new theories and solutions, though none has gained acceptance from the scholarly community. The manuscript serves as a reminder that even in our age of advanced analytical techniques and global information sharing, some puzzles remain stubbornly unsolved. Perhaps the true significance of the Voynich manuscript lies not in whatever secrets its text might contain, but in what it represents about the human capacity for creating meaning and beauty even when that meaning remains hidden from others. The unknown author invested enormous time and skill in creating this work, filling its pages with carefully crafted text and exquisite illustrations that continue to captivate viewers centuries later. Whether the manuscript records genuine knowledge, spiritual visions, or elaborate fantasy, it stands as a testament to the creativity and dedication of its mysterious creator. As we contemplate this enigmatic book in its climate-controlled case, surrounded by the accumulated wisdom of ages, we are reminded that knowledge takes many forms and that understanding is not always immediate or complete. The Voynich manuscript waits patiently for the key that might unlock its secrets, or perhaps it serves a different purpose entirely, challenging us to accept that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved, beautiful and meaningful precisely because they resist our attempts to categorize and explain them. In the shadow of the Great Pyramid at Giza, where the desert wind carries whispers of ages long past, stands one of humanity's most enigmatic monuments. The Great Sphinx gazes eternally eastward toward the rising sun, its weathered face bearing an expression of serene mystery that has captivated visitors for thousands of years. Carved from a single massive outcrop of limestone, this colossal figure combines the body of a lion with the head of a human, creating a hybrid creature that seems to bridge the world of animals and gods, earth and heaven, past and present. For most of recorded history, scholars have accepted that the Sphinx was created during Egypt's Old Kingdom period, roughly 4,500 years ago, as part of the great building projects undertaken by the pharaohs of the 4th dynasty. According to conventional archaeological wisdom, the monument was commissioned by Pharaoh Khafre around 2500 before Christ, carved to complement his nearby pyramid and serve as a guardian of the sacred necropolis. The face of the Sphinx was thought to represent Khafre himself, transformed into divine form to watch over his eternal resting place. This traditional dating places the Sphinx firmly within the established timeline of Egyptian civilization, when pharaonic power was at its height and massive construction projects demonstrated the kingdom's wealth and organizational capabilities. The technical skill required to carve such an enormous figure from living rock would have been well within the abilities of Old Kingdom craftsmen who had already demonstrated their mastery of stone working in the construction of the pyramids and other monumental architecture. However, in the late 20th century, a controversial new theory emerged that would challenge everything scholars thought they knew about the Sphinx's origins. Dr. Robert Schoch, a geologist from Boston University, began examining the monument not as an archaeologist or Egyptologist, but as a scientist trained to read the stories written in stone by natural processes acting over vast periods of time. What Schoch discovered in the limestone walls surrounding the Sphinx would ignite a debate that continues to this day. Schoch's geological analysis focused on the patterns of erosion visible on the Sphinx and the walls of the enclosure from which it was carved. The limestone showed clear signs of weathering that appeared to be caused by flowing water rather than the wind-driven sand that characterizes the current desert environment. The erosion patterns were particularly pronounced on the body of the Sphinx and the western wall of the enclosure, where deep vertical channels and rounded profiles suggested prolonged exposure to rainfall or flowing water. This observation was significant because Egypt has been an arid region for thousands of years, with minimal rainfall that would be insufficient to create the type of water erosion visible on the Sphinx. The last period when the region experienced substantial rainfall was during the Neolithic subpluvial, a climatic period that ended around 5,000 years ago when increased monsoon activity brought regular precipitation to North Africa. If the Sphinx showed evidence of water erosion, Schoch argued, it must have been carved before the region became truly arid. Schoch's analysis suggested that the Sphinx could be significantly older than previously believed, possibly dating back 7,000 to 9,000 years or even earlier. This would place its creation during a period when the climate was more humid and when early Neolithic peoples were developing the first agricultural settlements along the Nile Valley. Such an ancient date would revolutionize our understanding of early civilization and the development of monumental architecture. The implications of Schoch's theory extend far beyond simple chronology. If the Sphinx is indeed thousands of years older than conventional dating suggests, it would mean that sophisticated stone carving techniques and monumental architecture developed much earlier than previously believed. It would also raise profound questions about the identity of its builders and their relationship to later Egyptian civilization. Were they the ancestors of the pharaonic Egyptians, or did they represent an entirely different culture whose achievements were later appropriated and modified by subsequent peoples? Schoch's geological evidence gained support from other researchers who began to examine the Sphinx with fresh eyes. Seismic surveys of the area around the monument revealed subsurface anomalies that might indicate chambers or voids beneath the structure, suggesting that the visible monument might be only part of a larger complex. These findings added weight to the argument that the Sphinx represented a more complex and ancient construction project than traditional archaeology had recognized. However, the majority of Egyptologists and archaeologists have remained skeptical of Schoch's water erosion hypothesis. They point out that the conventional dating of the Sphinx is supported by multiple lines of evidence beyond simple stylistic analysis. The monument's integration with other 4th dynasty structures at Giza, including causeways and temple complexes, suggests that it was planned as part of a unified architectural program. The style of carving and the artistic conventions used in the Sphinx's human head are consistent with Old Kingdom Egyptian art and differ markedly from earlier periods. Critics of the water erosion theory have also proposed alternative explanations for the weathering patterns observed by Schoch. They argue that the erosion could have been caused by factors other than direct rainfall, including underground water seepage, dewfall, or even industrial pollution from modern Cairo. The limestone used in the Sphinx's construction is known to be particularly soft and prone to weathering, which could account for the extensive erosion without requiring an ancient date. Some geologists have challenged Schoch's interpretation of the erosion patterns themselves, arguing that wind and sand can create weathering effects similar to those attributed to water erosion. The complex geology of the Giza Plateau, with its varying limestone layers and subsurface water movements, could produce erosion patterns that are difficult to interpret definitively. Without clear stratigraphic evidence or radiometric dating of the carved surfaces, they argue, geological analysis alone cannot provide reliable age estimates. The debate has also focused on the practical challenges that would have faced ancient builders attempting to create the Sphinx during the proposed earlier period. The technical skills required to plan and execute such a massive carving project would have demanded sophisticated knowledge of stoneworking, engineering, and project management. Archaeological evidence for such capabilities during the Neolithic period in Egypt remains limited, leading critics to question whether early peoples could have undertaken such an ambitious project. Supporters of the ancient Sphinx theory have responded by pointing to other examples of sophisticated early construction projects around the world. Sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which features massive stone pillars carved with intricate reliefs dating back over 11,000 years, demonstrate that Neolithic peoples were capable of monumental architecture far earlier than previously believed. The discovery of such sites has forced archaeologists to reconsider assumptions about the capabilities of early civilizations. Recent research has attempted to resolve the controversy through more sophisticated analytical techniques. Advanced weathering studies have examined the chemical and physical processes that affect limestone under different environmental conditions, trying to establish more precise timelines for the observed erosion patterns. Computer modeling of climate conditions during different historical periods has provided better understanding of when and how various types of weathering could have occurred. Some researchers have proposed compromise positions that attempt to reconcile the geological evidence with archaeological constraints. One theory suggests that the Sphinx might have been carved in multiple phases, with an original simpler form created during a wetter climatic period and later modified during the Old Kingdom to create the monument we see today. This would explain both the ancient erosion patterns and the stylistic elements that connect the Sphinx to 4th Dynasty art. Another possibility is that the Sphinx was carved from a natural rock formation that had already been weathered by water erosion during earlier climatic periods. Ancient Egyptian builders might have recognized the potential of this pre-weathered outcrop and decided to transform it into a monumental sculpture. This interpretation would account for the erosion patterns without requiring an impossibly ancient date for the carved monument itself. The investigation of the Sphinx's age has been complicated by the monument's long history of restoration and modification. Ancient Egyptian pharaohs, including Thutmose IV in the 15th century before Christ, undertook major restoration projects that added new stone and modified the monument's appearance. Roman period repairs and modern conservation efforts have further altered the original surfaces, making it difficult to distinguish between ancient weathering and more recent damage. The controversy surrounding the Sphinx's age reflects broader tensions within archaeology between traditional historical methods and emerging scientific techniques. As new analytical tools become available, they sometimes challenge established chronologies and interpretations that have been accepted for generations. The process of integrating new evidence with existing knowledge can be slow and contentious, particularly when the implications are as significant as those suggested by the ancient Sphinx hypothesis. The debate also highlights the importance of interdisciplinary collaboration in archaeological research. Geologists, climatologists, engineers, and art historians all bring different perspectives and expertise to the study of ancient monuments. While these different approaches sometimes lead to conflicting interpretations, they also provide opportunities for more comprehensive understanding of complex archaeological problems. Regardless of its ultimate age, the Sphinx remains one of humanity's most impressive achievements in stone carving and monumental architecture. Its creators, whether they worked 4,500 years ago or much earlier, possessed remarkable vision and skill. They transformed a natural rock outcrop into a powerful symbol that has endured through millennia of political upheaval, environmental change, and cultural transformation. As we stand before this ancient guardian in the soft light of dawn, watching the sun rise over the desert horizon just as it has for countless thousands of years, we are reminded that some questions may be more important than their answers. The Sphinx poses an eternal riddle not just about its own origins, but about the nature of human civilization and our relationship with the deep past. Whether ancient or even more ancient, it continues to challenge our assumptions and inspire our imagination, a testament to the enduring human desire to create monuments that will outlast the civilizations that built them. In the rolling hills of Zhejiang province in eastern China, where bamboo groves whisper ancient secrets and mist rises from terraced valleys that have been cultivated for thousands of years, lies one of archaeology's most perplexing discoveries. The Longyou caves represent a feat of underground engineering so vast and sophisticated that their very existence challenges our understanding of ancient Chinese capabilities and raises profound questions about what other marvels might lie hidden beneath the earth. The caves remained completely unknown to the modern world until 1992, when local villagers decided to pump water from what they believed to be natural ponds scattered across the landscape near the town of Xi'an Beikun. These seemingly ordinary bodies of water had been part of the local geography for as long as anyone could remember, used for washing clothes and watering animals without anyone suspecting that they concealed something extraordinary beneath their placid surfaces. As the water levels dropped during the pumping operation, the villagers were astonished to discover that what they had assumed to be natural ponds were actually the flooded entrances to massive artificial caverns carved directly into the solid rock beneath their feet. The scale of what lay hidden underground was breathtaking. Each cave represented a colossal excavation project, with some chambers reaching heights of over 100 feet and covering areas equivalent to several football fields. The discovery of the first cave led to systematic exploration that revealed an entire network of interconnected underground spaces. Archaeological surveys have identified at least 24 individual caves in the immediate area, with indications that many more might exist throughout the region. The caves appear to have been carved as a unified project with similar construction techniques and architectural features that suggest coordinated planning and execution by organized workforces operating under central direction. What makes the Longyou caves so remarkable is not just their size, but the precision and sophistication of their construction. The walls, floors, and ceilings are carved with geometric patterns and decorative motifs that demonstrate exceptional craftsmanship and artistic vision. Parallel ridges run along the walls in perfectly straight lines, creating rhythmic patterns that give the spaces a sense of ordered harmony. The ceiling surfaces feature carved reliefs that include fish, birds, and other symbolic designs executed with remarkable skill and attention to detail. The engineering challenges overcome by the cave builders were enormous. Excavating such vast spaces from solid rock would have required removing millions of tons of material, all of which had to be carefully extracted without causing structural collapse. The caves show evidence of sophisticated understanding of load-bearing principles, with pillars and supports positioned precisely where needed to maintain the integrity of the overhead rock formations. The ventilation systems that allowed workers to operate in the underground environment demonstrate knowledge of air circulation and atmospheric management. Perhaps most puzzling of all is the complete absence of any historical records documenting this massive construction project. Chinese civilization is renowned for its meticulous record-keeping, with written chronicles extending back thousands of years that document everything from imperial building projects to local administrative activities. Yet nowhere in the extensive Chinese historical literature is there any mention of the Longyou caves or any construction project that could account for their existence. This silence in the historical record is particularly striking given the enormous resources that would have been required to create the caves. The project would have employed thousands of workers for many years, consuming vast quantities of food, tools, and other supplies. Such an undertaking would have had significant economic and social impacts on the surrounding region, yet no trace of these activities appears in contemporary records or later historical accounts. Archaeological analysis has attempted to determine when the caves were created, but dating such structures presents unique challenges. Unlike artifacts made from organic materials that can be radiocarbon dated, carved rock surfaces provide few clues about their age. Researchers have examined tool marks, construction techniques, and architectural styles, but these analyses have yielded only approximate age ranges rather than precise dates. The most reliable estimates suggest that the caves were carved sometime between the 7th century before Christ and the 7th century after Christ, a span of over 1,000 years that encompasses several major dynastic periods in Chinese history. This broad time frame reflects the difficulty of dating purely archaeological evidence without supporting historical documentation or organic materials suitable for scientific dating techniques. The purpose of the Longyou caves remains as mysterious as their construction date. Various theories have been proposed to explain why ancient peoples would undertake such an enormous excavation project, but none has gained universal acceptance among researchers. The caves show no clear evidence of residential use, with none of the features typically associated with underground living spaces such as cooking areas, sleeping quarters, or waste disposal systems. One theory suggests that the caves might have served as massive storage facilities, perhaps for grain or other agricultural products. The cool, dry environment of the underground chambers would have been ideal for preserving food supplies, and the enormous capacity of the caves could have supported large populations during times of famine or siege. However, the decorative elements and careful finishing of the cave interiors seem excessive for purely utilitarian storage spaces. Another possibility is that the caves were created for military purposes, serving as underground barracks, weapons depots, or defensive positions during periods of warfare. The strategic location of the caves in eastern China, near important river systems and trade routes, would have made them valuable military assets. The ability to conceal large numbers of troops and supplies underground could have provided significant tactical advantages during conflicts. Religious or ceremonial explanations have also been proposed for the caves. Some researchers suggest that they might have been created as underground temples or ritual spaces for religious activities that required isolation from the outside world. The careful decoration and monumental scale of the chambers would be consistent with religious architecture, and the secrecy surrounding their construction might reflect the esoteric nature of the practices they housed. The possibility that the caves served industrial purposes has been explored by researchers studying ancient Chinese mining and manufacturing techniques. The caves might have been created to extract valuable minerals or to house manufacturing operations that required controlled environmental conditions. However, geological surveys have found no evidence of valuable mineral deposits in the area, and the caves lack the specialized features typically associated with industrial facilities. Recent investigations have used modern technology to explore aspects of the caves that were previously inaccessible to researchers. Three-dimensional scanning has created detailed digital models of the cave interiors, allowing precise measurement of architectural features and identification of construction techniques. Ground-penetrating radar has been used to search for additional hidden chambers and to map the full extent of the underground network. These technological approaches have revealed new details about the sophistication of the cave construction. The precision of the carving work, visible in the perfectly parallel ridge patterns and geometric decorations, suggests the use of standardized tools and systematic construction methods. The acoustic properties of the chambers have been studied, revealing that some spaces appear to have been designed with specific sound characteristics that might have enhanced their use for ceremonial or administrative purposes. Water management within the caves shows evidence of sophisticated hydraulic engineering. Drainage channels and water collection systems were integrated into the cave design, preventing flooding and maintaining appropriate moisture levels in different areas. The systems that kept the caves dry for centuries before their modern discovery demonstrate remarkable understanding of underground water dynamics and long-term environmental control. The social organization required to complete such a massive project raises important questions about ancient Chinese society and administrative capabilities. Coordinating the work of thousands of laborers over many years would have required sophisticated project management, resource allocation, and quality control systems. The uniformity of construction techniques across multiple caves suggests centralized planning and standardized training for the work crews. The absence of human remains or burial artifacts in the caves has ruled out mortuary explanations that might account for their secretive nature. Unlike Egyptian pyramids or other monumental tombs, the Longyou caves show no evidence of having been designed as eternal resting places for important individuals. This absence of mortuary context eliminates one of the most common explanations for mysterious ancient monuments. Modern conservation efforts have focused on protecting the caves from deterioration now that they are exposed to air and tourism pressures. The change from their long-term underwater environment to atmospheric exposure has created new challenges for preserving the carved surfaces and structural integrity of the chambers. Climate control systems and visitor management protocols have been implemented to minimize damage while allowing continued research and limited public access. The Longyou caves represent a profound reminder that even in regions with extensive historical documentation, major aspects of the past can remain completely hidden from modern knowledge. Despite China's reputation for comprehensive record-keeping, this massive engineering project disappeared so completely from historical memory that its existence was forgotten for over 1,000 years. The discovery raises uncomfortable questions about how much of human history remains unknown and what other achievements might lie buried and forgotten. As we imagine descending into these silent chambers, our footsteps echoing in spaces that were carved by unknown hands for forgotten purposes, we are confronted with the limits of historical knowledge and the enduring capacity of the past to surprise us. The Longyou caves stand as monuments to human ambition and capability, testament to the fact that our ancestors were capable of achievements that we are only beginning to discover and understand. In their carved walls and decorated ceilings, we see reflected the eternal human drive to create something permanent and meaningful, even if the reasons for that creation remain forever mysterious. In the shimmering heat of the Mesopotamian plain, where the ancient Euphrates River once wound its way through landscapes that witnessed the birth of civilization itself, stands a mystery that has captivated the human imagination for over 2 millennia. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, described by classical writers as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, represent perhaps the most elusive of all legendary achievements. Unlike the pyramids of Egypt or the ruins of ancient temples that still pierce the desert sky, the Hanging Gardens have left no trace that archaeologists can definitively identify, existing only in the written accounts of ancient historians who may never have seen them with their own eyes. The classical sources describe the gardens in terms that seem almost too magnificent to be real. According to these accounts, the gardens rose in great terraces above the city of Babylon, their lush vegetation creating a green paradise in the midst of the arid Mesopotamian landscape. Water flowed continuously through elaborate irrigation systems, nourishing exotic plants and trees from distant lands that had been transported to create a botanical wonderland unlike anything else in the ancient world. The sight of this artificial mountain of greenery, visible from great distances across the flat plains, was said to inspire awe and wonder in all who beheld it. The most detailed ancient account comes from the Greek historian Diodorus Siculus, writing in the 1st century before Christ. He described the gardens as covering an area roughly 400 feet square, rising in a series of terraces to a height of over 75 feet. Each level was supported by massive stone pillars and arches that created a foundation strong enough to bear the enormous weight of soil, water, and vegetation. The entire structure was said to be waterproofed with layers of reeds, asphalt, and lead to prevent the irrigation water from seeping through and damaging the supporting architecture below. Diodorus attributed the creation of the gardens to a Syrian king who built them for his wife, who missed the green hills and fragrant gardens of her mountainous homeland. This romantic origin story, with its themes of love transcending geography and human ingenuity overcoming natural limitations, has contributed to the enduring appeal of the Hanging Gardens legend. The image of a powerful ruler transforming the harsh desert landscape to please his beloved wife speaks to universal human desires for beauty, comfort, and the conquest of natural obstacles. Other classical writers provided additional details that both enriched and complicated the picture of the gardens. Strabo, the great geographer of the ancient world, described elaborate mechanical systems that lifted water from the Euphrates River to irrigate the upper terraces. These machines, operated by human or animal power, represented sophisticated hydraulic engineering that would have been remarkable for any period of ancient history. The continuous operation of such systems would have required constant maintenance and enormous resources, suggesting that the gardens represented not just an architectural achievement, but an ongoing demonstration of royal wealth and administrative capability. However, as archaeologists began systematic excavation of ancient Babylon in the 19th and 20th centuries, they faced a puzzling problem. Despite extensive digging throughout the ruins of Nebuchadnezzar's palace and the surrounding areas where the gardens should have been located, no trace of the massive stone foundations and elaborate water systems described by classical writers has ever been found. The absence of archaeological evidence for such a large structure is particularly striking given that other Babylonian monuments, including the famous Ishtar Gate and the foundations of the Tower of Babel, have been successfully identified and excavated. This archaeological silence led some scholars to propose that the Hanging Gardens of Babylon might never have existed at all, existing only as a literary creation or perhaps as a conflation of several different ancient gardens that were combined in later accounts into a single magnificent structure. The classical sources that describe the gardens were all written centuries after the supposed construction date, and none of the authors claimed to have personally visited Babylon or seen the gardens themselves. This temporal distance between the alleged construction and the written accounts raises questions about the reliability of the descriptions. Yet the possibility that the gardens existed but have been lost to time cannot be entirely dismissed. Ancient Babylon was built primarily from mud brick, a material that deteriorates rapidly when exposed to weather and can completely disappear over the course of centuries. The constant rebuilding and redevelopment of the city over thousands of years of occupation might have obliterated traces of earlier structures, particularly if they were built in areas that were later used for different purposes. River changes and flooding could have further obscured archaeological evidence, making it difficult to locate remains of ancient hydraulic systems. In recent decades, a new theory has emerged that attempts to resolve the mystery by proposing that the Hanging Gardens did exist, but not in Babylon. Dr. Stephanie Daly, an Assyriologist at Oxford University, has argued that the gardens were actually located in Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire, and were built by King Sennacherib in the early 7th century before Christ. This theory is based on careful analysis of cuneiform inscriptions and archaeological evidence that suggests Sennacherib created elaborate garden systems around his palace complex. Daly's research has identified several cuneiform texts in which Sennacherib describes creating magnificent gardens with sophisticated irrigation systems that brought water from distant mountains to nourish exotic plants in his royal city. These inscriptions include technical details about the engineering challenges involved in the project, including the construction of aqueducts, canals, and mechanical water lifting devices that match many of the features attributed to the Hanging Gardens by classical writers. Archaeological evidence from Nineveh supports the possibility that large-scale garden projects were undertaken there during Sennacherib's reign. Excavations have revealed traces of elaborate water management systems, including channels, reservoirs, and what appear to be the foundations of mechanical installations that could have been used for irrigation. The topography around Nineveh, with its hills and natural water sources, would have been much more suitable for the type of terraced garden system described in classical accounts than the flat terrain around Babylon. The confusion between Babylon and Nineveh in later classical sources could be explained by the political and cultural dominance of Babylon in the centuries following the fall of the Assyrian Empire. To Greek and Roman writers, Babylon had become synonymous with Mesopotamian civilization and imperial grandeur, making it a natural location to attribute any legendary achievement from the region. The actual historical details of Assyrian accomplishments might have been forgotten or deliberately transferred to the better-known Babylonian context. This geographical reattribution of the gardens would also explain some of the technical challenges that have puzzled engineers studying the classical descriptions. The flat terrain around Babylon would have made it extremely difficult to create the natural water pressure needed for the elaborate fountain systems described in ancient accounts, while the hillier landscape around Nineveh would have provided much better conditions for gravity-fed irrigation systems. The availability of suitable stone for construction would also have been greater in the Nineveh region. Recent archaeological work in Iraq has been complicated by political instability and security concerns, limiting the ability of researchers to conduct extensive excavations in either Babylon or Nineveh. However, satellite imagery and remote sensing techniques have provided new ways to study the ancient landscape and identify potential archaeological sites. These technologies have revealed traces of ancient canal systems and agricultural installations that might be related to the legendary gardens, though definitive identification remains elusive. The question of whether the Hanging Gardens existed as described or at all reflects broader issues about the relationship between myth and history in the ancient world. Classical writers often blended factual reporting with legendary material, creating accounts that preserved both historical information and cultural values. The gardens might represent a real achievement that was later embellished and mythologized, or they might be entirely fictional constructions designed to illustrate ideals about royal power, human ingenuity, and the transformation of nature through art and technology. The persistence of the Hanging Gardens legend throughout centuries of changing civilizations suggests that the story serves important cultural functions beyond simple historical documentation. The image of a lush paradise created through human effort in the midst of harsh natural conditions resonates with universal themes about the relationship between civilization and nature. The gardens represent human aspiration to transcend environmental limitations and create beauty and abundance through knowledge and determination. Modern attempts to reconstruct what the Hanging Gardens might have looked like have drawn on both ancient descriptions and contemporary understanding of hydraulic engineering and botanical science. These reconstructions, whether theoretical models or actual garden installations, help us appreciate the technical challenges that would have been involved in creating such a structure. The engineering required to support the enormous weight of soil and water while maintaining proper drainage and irrigation would have pushed ancient technology to its limits. The ecological aspects of the gardens, if they existed, would have represented an early example of what we now call landscape architecture on a monumental scale. The selection and cultivation of plants from different climatic regions would have required sophisticated understanding of botany and agricultural techniques. The creation of artificial microclimates through terracing, irrigation, and strategic planting would have demonstrated remarkable knowledge of environmental science. The economic implications of maintaining such an elaborate garden complex would have been enormous, requiring not only the initial investment in construction, but ongoing expenses for water, labor, and plant replacement. The gardens would have served as a powerful symbol of royal wealth and administrative capability, demonstrating the ruler's ability to command vast resources for projects that served aesthetic rather than purely practical purposes. Whether they existed in Babylon, Nineveh, or only in the realm of imagination, the Hanging Gardens continue to inspire architects, engineers, and gardeners who seek to create green spaces in challenging environments. Modern projects like rooftop gardens, vertical farms, and elaborate landscape installations in arid regions draw inspiration from the legendary achievement attributed to ancient Mesopotamian kings. The gardens represent an enduring human dream of creating paradise through the marriage of art, science, and determination. As we contemplate this most elusive of ancient wonders, we are reminded that some of history's most powerful stories transcend the simple question of factual accuracy. The Hanging Gardens live on in human imagination as a symbol of what becomes possible when vision, resources, and skill combine to transform dreams into reality. Whether they bloomed in ancient terraces or only in the gardens of memory, they continue to nourish the human spirit with their promise that even the most barren landscapes can be transformed into places of beauty and wonder. As our journey through time's hidden chambers draws to a close, we find ourselves standing at the intersection of knowledge and mystery, where the familiar world of facts meets the vast unknown territories that still await exploration. We have walked through underground labyrinths that may exist only in radar shadows beneath Egyptian sands, dove into Caribbean waters where stone formations blur the line between nature and artifice, and examined artifacts that whisper of technologies our ancestors weren't supposed to possess. Each mystery we have encountered tells us something profound about the nature of human curiosity and the limits of our understanding. The clay jars that might have sparked with ancient electricity, the tablets inscribed with symbols that refuse to yield their meaning, the glass cups that change color through processes we struggle to replicate even today. These objects remind us that knowledge is not a straight line from ignorance to understanding, but rather a complex web of discovery, loss, and rediscovery that spans the millennia. In the carved stones of Scotland and the buried chambers of China, we see evidence of human communities that invested enormous effort in creating something permanent, something that would endure long after their creators had returned to dust. Whether these monuments served practical, religious, or symbolic purposes, they demonstrate a fundamental human need to leave marks upon the world, to communicate across the vast distances of time. They are letters addressed to the future, written in languages we are still learning to read. The debates that surround these mysteries reflect something equally important about human nature: our deep need to understand, to categorize, to fit new discoveries into frameworks that make sense of our place in the cosmic story. When geologists and archaeologists disagree about the age of the Sphinx, when linguists struggle to decode ancient scripts, when engineers marvel at the precision of Roman glassmaking, they are engaging in the same fundamental process that drove our ancestors to carve symbols in stone and build monuments that defied explanation. Perhaps the greatest lesson these mysteries teach us is humility. Despite our advanced technologies, our sophisticated analytical tools, and our accumulated centuries of scientific progress, the past continues to surprise us. Clay tablets emerge from Romanian soil that challenge our understanding of when writing began. Underwater formations appear in tropical seas that force us to reconsider what was possible for ancient civilizations. Gardens that may never have existed continue to inspire us with their vision of what human ingenuity might accomplish. Some riddles, we have learned, refuse to provide neat answers. The Voynich manuscript sits in its climate-controlled case, its pages filled with text that flows like natural language but resists every attempt at translation. The Baghdad battery generates measurable voltage but leaves us guessing about its original purpose. The Bimini Road stretches beneath the waves, perfectly arranged yet ambiguously natural. These mysteries remind us that uncertainty is not a flaw in our knowledge but an essential aspect of the human experience. In our modern world, where information seems instantly available and every question appears answerable through digital search, these ancient puzzles serve a vital function. They preserve space for wonder, for imagination, for the acknowledgement that reality is far stranger and more complex than any simple explanation can contain. They keep alive the sense of mystery that has always driven human exploration and discovery. The echoes of the forgotten continue to reverberate through our understanding of what it means to be human. Each artifact we have examined, each monument we have explored, each theory we have considered adds another note to the vast symphony of human experience that began when our ancestors first looked up at the stars and wondered what lay beyond the horizon. Their questions are our questions, their hopes are our hopes. Their desire to understand and create and leave something meaningful behind is the same desire that drives us today. As we imagine these mysterious objects resting in their museums and archaeological sites, slowly revealing their secrets to patient researchers, we are reminded that the work of understanding the past is never finished. Each generation brings new tools, new perspectives, new questions that illuminate different aspects of ancient achievements. What seems impossible to us today may become obvious to future researchers who approach these mysteries with knowledge and technologies we cannot yet imagine. The ancient world speaks to us still, not through certainty but through wonder, not through answers but through better questions. In the silence between what we know and what we hope to discover, imagination takes flight. In that space between fact and possibility, between science and speculation, we find room for the human spirit to explore, to dream, and to continue the eternal conversation between past and future that defines our species. These echoes of the forgotten will outlast us all, continuing to puzzle and inspire generations yet to come. They remind us that mystery is not the enemy of knowledge, but its essential companion, that the unknown is not empty space but fertile ground where new understanding takes root and grows. In preserving these puzzles, in continuing to study and debate and wonder about them, we honor both our ancestors who created them and our descendants who will carry forward the quest to understand what it means to be human in a universe full of wonders waiting to be discovered.